Welcome to Straight Up Dog Talk, a new kind of podcast where no topic is off limits. We're bringing in experts and owners to have the conversations we should be having as a dog community. Each week, a new guest will share firsthand experiences, educational resources, or professional guidance to help you learn and grow along with your dog. You won't get one perspective here, you'll get them all, because every dog is different and every owner is too.
You can follow along on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Straight Up Dog Talk, or by visiting www.straightupdogtalk.com. Tune in from any of your favorite podcast platforms.
Welcome to Straight Up Dog Talk. I'm Em, and I'm here, as usual, with Josh.
Hello.
And tonight, our guest is April, and she's going to be talking to us about trick training at home with her dogs, Holly and Smokey. How are you doing tonight, April?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on.
We're really excited to have you and so glad you can make it tonight. Why don't we start off by talking a little bit about Holly and Smokey? Let's hear their origin stories and how you got them and kind of just a little bit about what life is like at your home.
All right. Sounds great. Holly is my oldest dog. She is a 9-year-old Australian cattle dog mix who we adopted from a rescue at 6 months old. And she is basically the perfect dog. She's our first dog together as adults. And we joke that she catfished us, that Australian cattle dogs, blue heelers, are the best dogs in the world because she's so perfect. She is really, really smart, but she's also a sassy little girl. She will get very vocal with you and tell you if you are late with walk time, treat time, or anything like that. She's also very quick to pick up new things and highly food motivated. So she's always been really easy to train any new skill. Her brother, though, Smokey, is a very different story. He came to us in August of 2020 in the midst of the pandemic as a 15-month or so old pup. He's a purebred blue heeler, but we got him from a shelter in Salt Lake City, Utah. He was an owner surrender for behavioral issues. When his family lost their home, they moved in with members of their family, and he started to display reactive behavior like lunging, barking, nipping at heels. Basically, he was a terrible house guest in this new home that his family had to move into. So he was surrendered to the local shelter and spent about 6 weeks there during his adolescence, which, if you're familiar with Australian cattle dogs or herding dogs in general, that is not an environment that's very conducive to their needs for an output, so their energy. And they're also very particularly loyal to their person or their humans as a sect. So it was very difficult for him. He was there about 6 weeks before we were able to get a hold of the shelter and arrange for him to have a vet visit, to be cleared to travel across state lines, and arrange for transportation for him between Salt Lake City and Phoenix. He has since started to display reactivity towards strangers and strange dogs, which was very problematic at first when he came home, because every dog, every person that he saw on a walk was a cause for explosive behavior. The lunging, growling, barking that he had been doing in this new home situation where he was rehomed from was very common. He's worked really hard, and we worked really hard with a trainer to get him to the point where he can coexist in spaces. We're able to have people over at our home for periods of time, and he's able to relax during that time. But that took us easily like 18 months of work. So he's a very different dog. He lacks Holly's confidence in approaching new environments and new things. He's afraid of some of the props that we use for agility and tricks sometimes. So I always take time to introduce him to things much more slowly and use Holly as a demonstrator dog for him in those situations. I called her over to smell the new thing, whatever it is, and reward her for doing so. and invite him to do the same, because he just has big feelings about the world. And she does not. She's confident, she's happy, she was well socialized, she loves people, and doesn't really care about other dogs. So it takes a lot for her to be overwhelmed. So she's really like the perfect big sister for him.
And how did he deal with her coming into the house?
The first few days were a lot because he was about 15 months old in his adolescence. He had been cooped up in a car for a 10-hour ride between Salt Lake City and Phoenix the day that he arrived. Prior to that, he'd been in the shelter for 6 weeks. So he had a lot of energy and a lot of feelings about being in this new place. And Holly, that first night, she just wanted to go to bed. So there was definitely a mismatch of energy at first. Really, within the first week, they were okay being in the room together, but we still wanted to keep an eye on them more often than not because, yeah, he had way too much energy and she was pretty chill. She was over 5 years old at the time, and she's always been the dog who has the off switch, like herding dog energy, but she will slow down. She will take a nap. She will take a break. And she's used to having her space and her independence. And he wanted to be a part of her space all of the time. So there was definitely an adjustment period. That first week was the hardest, but it took them months before like they would really cuddle or lay too close to each other, touch one another. He had to learn to go slower and give her some space, allow her to consent to having him in her business and having him like sniffing at her or whatever he wanted to do. And she needed to learn that if he was in her space in a way that was, too much for her, that she should absolutely, speak up and tell him to back off. He was just such a polite dog. Like she would allow him to like get too close to her. So we had to coach her as well to like speak up for yourself, girl. Like you can go ahead and get it. And you can go ahead and tell him that he's too close or he's messing with you. I mean, obviously, like if things were really challenging, we would step in rather than, forcing her to speak for herself. But it did take a while.
It took about 3 years for Toby and Fitz to really become friends and get to the point where I felt like I could trust them by walking out of the room and let them kind of do their own thing. Introducing a new dog is always really difficult in situations. And Fitz was also, still is, very energetic as well. Holly is a much calmer dog. Toby is a much calmer dog. You and I have talked before in previous conversations about how similar Smokey and Fitz are in their energy levels. And you really understand, I think, what it's like to have that active dog lifestyle. So I'm sure that it was a challenge, but it seems like they get along really well now.
Yeah, their dynamic is really great now. They play so well together. We still watch them, but now it's less a matter of refereeing and watching the body language for any potential issues. Now we get to watch because it's the cutest thing in the world. He is typically the instigator, and he knows that she's a little picky about having the feet touch. So he will do a bow behavior and sneak along the floor to get at her feet. So he'll nibble at her feet because he knows she doesn't like that. And she will get fired up. She'll get excited. She'll be like barking at him. And once she is in that mindset, he knows he can get her to play because she will tell him off. She will tell him to back off. And once that starts, then it is spicy time. And they will run around and they don't do as much chase. Holly would prefer more chase. And we're still trying to coach him to like run after her rather than do like the wrestling style play or like bitey face, as we call it, where they like put the other dog's head inside of their mouth and just kind of nibble on one another. It looks terrible if you don't have dogs or you haven't seen that kind of play before. But they'll do the air snapping, and it's really cute because they go back and forth. We can see that like the energy is positive for both of them. But yeah, it did take a while. It was not smooth sailing from the beginning. And yeah, it's continued to improve more and more as they spend time together. Like they choose to seek each other out for play or contact. And now they're ganging up on me, where if Holly tries to beg for food and I don't notice her or I don't get up, she will send little brother over, because he is more of the dog that will sit on your chest and drool in your face to get your attention. So now they're ganging up on me.
So I don't know. I mean, obviously, I've talked about on this show about integrating Artemis, my third dog, with Odie, who was my second dog. And then I had my first dog, which was Oliver, who was 6 when we brought Odie in, who at the time was 5. And I don't know, I caught lightning in a bottle. I mean, I don't know if it was because they were both Yorkies, they were around the right age or what, but they got along from the jump, from the moment Odie walked in the house. Like, Odie wanted to explore every nook and cranny of the house, and Oliver was just following him like an older brother, basically like, Mom and Dad don't want you to go in there. And then even when they did fight, it was, like you said, it was kind of that bitey face, you know, that got a little too serious, but they were also Yorkies and had horrible teeth. So it wasn't like they could do any damage to each other.
And just to like bring that into the mix too, because I used to pet sit when they had Odie and Ollie, and I would bring Toby over, and Toby would play with Odie and Ollie, and they were just like the 3 very best friends, and they would just
Toby would play with Odie, and Oliver would sit on a couch and basically be like, kids.
Yeah, Ollie was not as fond of the playing, but he did get involved every once in a while. Play behavior is one of my favorite things when it comes to dogs, because they're all so unique when it comes to their play behaviors. And when April and I were talking the other night, she was telling me about this play behavior that Smokey has, and I'd like her to share a little bit about that. I will let you just elaborate on what you call it and everything.
Smokey's favorite game. It's the silliest thing in the world, and I really don't remember how it became his thing, but the game is called Tree, and if he hears me say that word more than once, he will come into the room and start staring at me. But the cue for this game is Tree, and it takes place around a tree in our yard. And he will ask for this game by staring at you, like as we sit out on the porch most evening, because here in Arizona, it doesn't get that cold. So we're out on the patio, having our evening drink, hanging out as a family, and he will stare, and he'll lift the one foot. He does the point, and he'll stare, and he'll stare. And then he'll start barking, like, you know what I want, give me the game. So then finally, either me or my husband will give in and we say the keyword. And at that point, Smokey begins spinning in circles while running across the yard. So he will continue Tasmanian devil style all the way over to the other side of the yard where the tree in question is. It's only the one tree in our yard. No other trees are acceptable, but this one. Trees in public can also be used for this form of the game, but there's only one in our yard that's good enough. So he comes to that tree, and either we will shake the branches of the tree to scare away the bird that might be in the tree. Even if there's not a leaf on the tree, not a bird on the tree, we still must play the game and scare the birds away. Or I will kick my foot to the left side and then the right side alternately, and he will chase after my foot back and forth and alternately jump up at the trunk of the tree. It makes no sense. It's the silliest thing, but I love it because it's uniquely his. I've never known or seen another dog be that excited about a tree, and that's just his thing. That is what he loves most in the world, other than mom, dad, and sister.
I think it's fantastic. And I definitely think that you need to get something up on Instagram and TikTok showing this behavior, because I think a lot of people would really enjoy seeing the dog Tasmanian devil across the backyard.
Very fitting too, because he's an Australian cattle dog and they're kind of known to be Tasmanian devil-like in their behaviors. So yeah, that tracks.
Let's move on a little bit. I know you said that you live in Arizona, and we've talked about the temperature and how it's very different in Arizona than it is here in Iowa. So why don't you talk a little bit about like the summer temperatures versus the winter temperatures and kind of how the trick training started because of this?
Yeah, so summer in Arizona is kind of like if you preheated your oven and stuck your head in it while blowing hair dryers at either side of your head at the same time. It is very hot. It is very dry. It's too much. We see temperatures typically between 110 and 122, 123 for months at a time. Past summer, we had 6 straight weeks of days 115 or higher, which is dangerously hot, not just because of pavement temperatures, but also because you can get heat stroke. Even at 2 o'clock in the morning, if it's, 102 degrees, you could still get heat stroke in pitch black at night. So it's very different than what I like to call decent places. When I'm talking about summer, I'm very anti-Arizona. But in the winter, I'm very pro-Arizona because it's lovely this time of year. We can be outside basically from sun up to sundown. So it's essentially the opposite of how it works other places, where winter is your shut-in season. For us, that's summer. And because of how long and hot the days are, I had to come up with ways to keep my cattle dogs fully exercised, to engage their brains, and to do something other than sitting inside and laying on the couch with them. Because even Holly, with her energy level, she has the off switch, but she still loves to go for a walk. And not being able to do that for 14 hours out of the day without risking heat stroke if you're outside for more than like 15 minutes, it's a big deal. So we started working on tricks and agility skills with her before I even adopted Smokey. And now having him, it's even more helpful because he has an even higher energy level. He's probably double the intensity that Holly is because he is younger. He's just now 4, but he has the energy of an adolescent blue heeler, which is basically infinite. So between the two of them, like there has to be something. So we've worked on skills that will assist him in managing his reactivity when we're out. There are certain games that we play and certain trick behaviors that are really good for helping to get his attention away from what's upsetting him.
Where did you find the tricks? How did you get started in discovering that this was the right path for you?
So for a while, I was relying on, I saw a cute video, let me see if my dog can do that, which is not really the method I'd recommend because seeing the finished product on Instagram and thinking you can replicate it immediately with your dog is not always going to give you all of the steps to get there. It's great entertainment, but it's not always helpful. So I did try things that way at first. It wasn't until probably 2019 when I realized, because I had a friend on Instagram with a mixed breed rescue dog who is competing in AKC agility, that you can register mixed breed dogs through AKC. I didn't know that was a thing. Holly is my first dog as an adult, certainly my first opportunity to do sports or anything like that with a dog. I didn't realize that was available. But if anyone didn't know that, the category is called canine partners. That's what to look for. But yeah, when I realized that was a possibility, I looked for sport options in my area. And I live in the southwestern quadrant of the Phoenix metro area, essentially. And for anyone who's not from Phoenix, everything's in the East Valley, pretty much. And traffic is terrible, particularly at the times of day that I would be driving to take my dog to like agility classes across town. So a 45-minute to an hour drive turns into a 90-minute drive. And at the time I was working full-time and commuting across town already. So there wasn't really a good option for like sport classes with her. I remember looking, any number of times. And everything I found was at least a 45-minute drive away. And I just couldn't make that sort of thing work with my schedule. But trick training was something that I could do at home on my own time. It was something that I could find information on. There are tutorials on AKC and also the other site that I have found since called Do More With Your Dog. They have tutorials on how to teach your dog the behavior. So you're not just seeing a finished product and trying to replicate it, which is very helpful.
Yes, I can see where that would absolutely be more helpful. I think that's, again, one of the biggest problems with social media is that social media does present that polished final picture, and it gives people, I think, the wrong idea that training is instantaneous and that the end product is easily achieved. But knowing what we know as people who work with our dogs on a daily basis, that it isn't that easy and that it doesn't just happen overnight, knowing that there are resources out there to show you the process is really, really good. And we've talked about the AKC in another episode previous to this, and their agility sports over there, and it's more traditional dog sports. But the Do More With Your Dogs, you said that falls into a little bit of a different category. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so there are 3 different types of titles that you can get through Do More With Your Dog. There are trick titles based on difficulty level. So you can get a novice level, intermediate, advanced, and then expert title. There are also stunt dog titles, which are more of a performance. If I'm not mistaken, I have not completed any stunt dog work. And then there's also like animal acting and canine fitness. So if you want your dog to be in commercials, you can pursue like animal acting behaviors and get titled to do that and learn how to teach your dog the behaviors that are desirable for that kind of an environment. Canine fitness does involve some of the tricks, things like doing a wall stand where your dog like stands on their back legs and puts their forelegs up onto a wall for a period of time to, stretch and strengthen the body. So there's some overlap between the fitness items and then the trick behaviors. Some of the more dynamic tricks are also included in fitness. But yeah, there's very different ways. There are also like challenges that you can do where you complete like a 5K run with your dog and submit that to your evaluator or directly through Do More With Your Dog for titles. So there's some other activities for folks that maybe don't see themselves as dog sport people. If they're intimidated by showing up at a dog sport event, or they run into the situation that I had where dog sport classes are just not workable on any kind of a consistent basis. Tricks are available anytime, all the time. Things like doing a 5K with your dog, that's something that is more accessible. So there's some different options to pursue different kinds of activities with your dog.
I've said this before and I will say it again. If I had known about this kind of engagement activity level when Fitz was younger, I definitely would have gotten him started in something like this. But now I know, and in the future, we'll probably look to these kind of resources personally if I get another high energy dog.
I was going to pause the recording, but I realized that it's pretty much a commercial if I say what I'm doing. My straight up dog talk hoodie is so warm right now. So
take that merch off.
I'll take the merch off as I remember the store that we go through.
I think it's
Spread shirt. So yeah, if you're looking for a really nice hoodie that inside is toasty warm, go to our store at Spreadshirt. Much better. Okay.
All right. Well, before we get into your process of training and how you knew that the dogs were the right kind of dogs for trick training, let's just talk briefly about their titles and how you submit these to evaluators for these titles.
Yeah. Through AKC, there is a registry where you can look up a local evaluator or find one that you can send an email to submit video for things like tricks. They also have a program called Virtual Home Manners where you can do like kind of home obedience, like not running through an open door and greeting a friendly stranger, that sort of behavior. So yeah, they have a list of evaluators that you can connect with to submit or even meet up with. They also do a Canine Good Citizen program, which, that one you do meet up with an evaluator in person, because part of that is meeting a stranger, which is the evaluator. Your dog has to be prepared to do that. So some of it does require in person, but a lot of it is able to be done virtually, that you can submit. We did Holly's AKC novice trick dog title during the pandemic. Before we adopted Smokey, I was off work for 2 months. So we worked on her novice trick and submitted. I have a friend who's an AKC evaluator, so I didn't have to go find one. Benefits of Dogstagram for the win. Knowing a dog trainer here and there. Do More With Your Dog is also pretty easy to submit. I had a friend that was involved in that group already. Like, she had already pursued titles for her dogs through Do More With Your Dog, and she's actually the one who brought it to my attention. I wasn't aware of that one until this year, so much more recently. But you can also connect with a trick dog instructor / evaluator. Typically, you will enter like a Facebook group with them and any of their other, clients, where you can submit videos directly into the Facebook group or to the evaluator, like in messages, or you can opt to have your videos just reviewed when you submit them through Do More With Your Dog. It's like a $10 fee to do that. So if you really are not comfortable finding an evaluator, you have that option. I personally want to have them evaluated before I'm submitting, because that's just how my brain works, but the option exists.
I think that's really cool that, especially for dogs like Smokey and for Fitz, who are reactive and don't do well around other dogs, or just don't want anything to do with other dogs outside of their bubble in general, that you can submit video clips and still be involved in these things and still get your ribbons and your titles without having to drive the 90-minute drive or take your dog into a situation that might not be great for them. So that's really great information. And I hope that helps some of our listeners get more involved in these things, because I think the tricks and the agility is probably my favorite part. I just think that it's so cool when people spend the amount of time that you do working with their dogs to perform these just insane tricks, which we've talked about Sparky and Kathleen before, and they were in a previous episode, and just really cool things. Smokey and Holly are not quite to the level of Sparky, but he's kind of a champ, but they're catching up. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you get them to learn a new trick and how you position them to succeed in learning the trick?
Yeah. So I'm very lucky. Both of my dogs are food motivated. So that is the first key to any training session. I always like to have more than one type of reward available. So something normal, regular, like a training treat, the same thing they would get every day. And then at least one other option, whether it's sliced carrots for Holly or cucumbers for Smokey. They each have a vegetable of preference. And then when it's something really special, I'll add in like cubes of cheese or hot dogs or some kind of meat for them. So having a few options, especially if your dog is motivated by food, like that's always a great way to start. I like to start all of their sessions with some of their favorite tricks that they know well and they feel very comfortable doing, to kind of warm them up to the fact that we are training, we are learning. I call it smart puppy time. When I let them know, when I grab my treat pouch and fill it up, I cue them with, do you want to be smart? Is it smart puppy time? Cue the annoying dog mom voice, but like it works to get so excited, and then we warm up with their favorite. Usually for Holly, that is always going to include sit pretty. That's the first trick that she learns that was just kind of superfluous. Like, it's not an obedience type behavior. It's not a safety behavior. It's just cute. And why her Auntie Pam, my best friend here in Arizona, taught her that in like 3 minutes with a handful of blueberries. So that is go-to for her. She knows that behavior warrants treats, and she will drop that on me repeatedly without question. So that's a confidence building behavior for her. That's a, oh yeah, I got this. I'm smart. I'm doing the thing well. I'm doing what mommy wants me to. For Smokey, you may have guessed if you were listening about his game that his behavior is a spin. He loves dynamic behaviors because he has so much energy and he's so excited to show me how smart he is. Like, smart puppy is a phrase that gets him very excited. So he will practice some spinning to get moving and get excited about it. And, sometimes I'll repeat those behaviors a few times before moving into something a little different, whether it's another behavior they already know or something completely new. It just depends on the day. We typically train in sessions that are between like 5 and 15 minutes, depending on how the dogs are feeling. And we take breaks. We'll take an hour break for lunch in between and then come back and, pick up with completely different behaviors, or just call it a day if they're struggling sometimes. There will be those days, those times where they opt out, or if I have tried to introduce something brand new and they're not getting it and they just start giving me their default behaviors. If I'm asking Holly to bow and she's giving me sit pretty, I know she's not understanding me. We're not communicating. She understands that I'm asking for something and she wants her treat, but she's not we're not communicating. So that's sometimes a section or a reason to know that it is time to take a quick break and step away for a bit. So we have go-to behaviors. We typically add in at least something new every other day, at least. Go back through some of the other behaviors maybe that we haven't worked on in a while. And I typically will introduce new behaviors with Holly first, especially if there's a prop involved, like the bar jump, the tunnel, the hoop jump, anything like that, because there's a thing in the environment and Smokey can be unsure of things. He's still scared of my 15-foot culmination tunnel. To be honest, he has to work with the smaller, like beach heap tunnel that I bought. At the beginning, it was like the super see-through, like nylon fabric one was like $12 or whatever. So he can deal with that one existing, but not the big one. But anything with props, I start with Holly first because he can show Smokey that the thing is not terrifying. The thing is not going to hurt her. The thing is just a thing. And if it's a behavior that she knows, I will have her repeat it to teach it to him. He's been working on sit pretty lately, which is a difficult behavior for him, interestingly, even though he's very strong. If you see pictures and videos of Smokey, he is built, but he's not a strong sitter. He tends to sit kind of sloppy, so he doesn't get a really good foundation under himself to prop up onto just his rear legs. Whereas Holly can stand and sit pretty for 5 minutes to stare at me for food. So yeah, like I will use her to demonstrate to help him, but he is just taking longer with that. And that's something I've noticed working with 2 very different dogs. He will sometimes pick up a behavior pretty easily. He will struggle with others, and she can be the total opposite. Sit pretty, for sure, they're opposites on. He loves to do an upright walk with his front paws on my forearm, and we walk. So he's on his 2 feet, walking like a werewolf. He loves that behavior. And Holly just cannot be bothered with it. She does not like it, doesn't want any part of training. She will opt out of training if we do that too much, like more than 2 or 3 times. And she's done. She's enjoyed that behavior and all. So we just don't do that with her, and I'll let Smokey do it a couple of times. So we adjust like different behaviors for different dogs, depending on what they're working on, what they're good at. And, if they're giving me a consistent opt-out on a certain trick or behavior, it could be that they just never want to do that. It could be that my technique is just really not helpful for them. Like they're not understanding me, so they're uncomfortable. So some things we just stop trying to practice.
How many tricks do you think they each know?
So I have a spreadsheet that I keep because I'm that kind of dog mom, and Holly is up to 40 tricks that she knows, and Smokey knows 25.
Wow.
They are not quite in superstar Sparky territory, but hopefully we can catch up.
You are. You guys are catching up. I mean, between the two of them, that's 65 tricks. So, I mean, you're pretty close just in general for total anyway. What are your favorite tricks that they do?
My favorite one that Holly does is a version of paws up, which is a behavior where the dog puts their paws onto an object, onto the handler. Like you can cue it in any number of ways, but they lift their front paws onto something or someone. And my husband and I adapted the paws up to become a hug for us. So we kneel down and cue Holly by putting our hands on our shoulders. And we say, Holly, I love you. And she puts her paws up onto our shoulders, which puts her little face right up into our faces. So we can get Holly kisses or a little nose nibble and a hug from Holly. So that is the cutest thing. Like, however we decided to make that happen, I don't even remember, but I'm glad we did because it was so cute. She has even done it with a couple of strangers. There was at least one kid in the neighborhood that we would see walking to the bus stop all the time that was just enamored with Holly. And we told her, like, if you kneel down and do this and say, Holly, I love you, she will give you a hug. And she did, and it was the cutest thing ever. Moki, I really do love his game. Like, it's super cute when he does that. But I think my favorite thing to watch him do is either when he's jumping straight up vertically, like they call it like boing, like bouncing up like Tigger, because he's just so muscular. Like you can really appreciate that he is a lean, athletic dog. And I guess I take some pride in that because there are folks that say like, you live in the suburbs. Why do you have herding dogs? They need cattle. What are you doing? You know, so having a dog that is extremely fit, active, healthy, happy, like seeing him do that behavior illustrates for me that, yeah, he's got the good life going on. He's feeling good. So I really like that. It might be a bit selfish that I appreciate that so much, but I think lean, healthy, happy dogs are a thing to be excited about. So
I completely agree. That goes back to something that we've talked about before and talked about in the dog community that we've created on Instagram about adapting your lifestyle to fit your dog's needs. And I really applaud you for doing that because Smokey he is a beast and he is a very fit and muscular dog. And you can absolutely tell that he's getting the energy burnout and the exercise that he needs in order to satisfy him mentally, emotionally, and physically. So I applaud you for that because he really, truly is a very, very happy dog. Let's talk a little bit about the weave poles. I know that you've had a little bit of issues with them since you started training because Smokey is a little bit terrified of new objects. But let's go over how you've done it. You've posted a lot about it on Instagram, and he is getting better. Why don't you kind of just walk us through a little bit of how you started, why he was scared, and how you got him through it?
yeah. So the weave poles are just a set of poles in a straight line, and the dog is supposed to walk through them in a slalom pattern, like going left to right. And because it's a new object, Smokey was initially completely opting out of even going near them. The weave pole set that I have has a metal base and PVC upright, which I was placing on basically my front entry tile, which is slightly variegated, where there can be a little movement between the metal and tile if the poles are touched or the base is moving a little bit. And I didn't really think about that before introducing the prop that way. I was just looking for space for the weave poles to be placed and for us to work on both sides of them. And it's an even-ish surface. But yeah, the slight bit of movement and the noise was definitely too much for Smokey right away. So he didn't want to participate in even trying the weave poles. I couldn't get him to come smell them, like at all, even though Holly would come over and engage with them for treats. You know, she's still working on her weaves even after like more exposure. Like she and I have done weaves several times throughout the years. and she's never going to have the agility dog drive for it. You know, if you watch dog agility, they weave through 12 pulls in 3 seconds, and Holly will do 6 pulls in like 12 to 15 seconds. So there's not an urgency to it. It's very much a work in progress, even with her. But we had some success recently when I took the weave pulls outside and anchored them down into the ground with some like tent stakes, which is the ideal use for them rather than indoors, probably because they have holes on the bottom. But because I have to be able to adapt everything to being indoors, my entire agility set is made up of things that are compatible indoors or out. But yeah, we introduced the weave poles outside, and he was interested enough to come check them out. I added in an even higher value treat, which was some leftover roast beef from dinner. We took that out of Dad's stash. So he was in. He was all about it. He was able to start weaving on his own without even being lured specifically, or like you hold a piece of food in your hand and literally walk the dog behind the piece of food. He was able to replicate that S-curve movement without following the food every step of the way. So he was able to not be lured the entire way through. In the course of one day's work, we spent all 3 of our full training sessions outside working on weaves. So probably 45 minutes or so of pretty consistent repetition with it. He was able to come that far. So he did really well just in a new environment.
For the dogs, they obviously have a different set of skills because Holly knows more than Smokey does. Are you always training them the same trick at the same time, or are you training them different tricks at the same time?
I do some of both. If we are working with something where there's a singular apparatus, like the weave poles, like our mini teeter-totter, things like that, I will sometimes separate them and then just take turns doing the same trick with Holly a few times and then Smokey a few times. But there are times, usually when we're not working with a specific apparatus or prop, then I will cue Holly to do like a sit, and cue Smokey to spin, cue Holly to do pretty, have Smokey do a down. So I will kind of alternate and do different behaviors with them. It depends, you know. So sometimes it will be the same thing, especially if we're working on like one behavior together. Like we did back up for a couple of weeks. We did like entire sessions that were backing up. So it was alternating between the 2 dogs. Holly backed up, Smokey backed up, to just keep going and really work on that behavior specifically. That one is one that I didn't expect them to like, because the introductory version of that is backing up between 2 objects, like between the couch and the wall, for instance. So they're walking forward into like a shoot type function, and then they have to walk backwards to get out of it. There's not enough room for them to turn around. And Holly is not a fan of being closed in spaces, and Smokey's weird about props. So I didn't think this was going to be very successful, but they both took to that immediately. They basically did it right the first time. So we've been kind of living in the backup world and really enjoying the fact that they're excited about that behavior and just keeping that up. So I've done entire sessions with that because they both get excited about it. Like they continue to enjoy that. And sometimes that's how I choose. My dog loves this particular trick, so we'll just do more of this. If we're, otherwise having a hard day, like we weren't successful, like with Battle, that's one that continues to evade us at this point. So if that's not going well, let's just back up for a while, because that's really fun. It's something they enjoy.
I think that it's really neat that you understand your dog's indicators. Clearly, you pay very close attention to their body language and their physical cues to you that say, okay, it's enough, we're done with this, or we really like this, or they're responding highly to the treat that you've chosen for whichever trick you're working on. What would be your advice to somebody who wants to get involved in this kind of stuff with their dog, as far as knowing that their dog is the right fit for trick training?
Well, the great thing is that trick training is appropriate for the vast majority of dogs. And really, a lot of the behaviors that almost every dog person wants their dog to learn, like sit on cue, lay down on cue, walk on a loose leash, stay, cuddle and call, those are doggish tricks. So realistically, everyone who has a dog in their home and is asking for some set of behaviors, even just for safety reasons, whether it's, sit, stay, calm and call, that sort of thing, we're already doing it. So if your dog can do any of those things, there are some behaviors they can do. Even when they're young, even when they're old, even dogs that are, with behavior issues like my Smokey, trick training is actually really great for him because it allows he and I to work together on something. So it increases our bond with one another, his understanding that, he and I are a team, and it helps him feel more confident, which is something that he is lacking. So it's, something that dogs with behavior issues can engage in, at least to some degree. Every dog's going to be a little different, what they want to participate in, how active a trick they want to do. Not every dog is going to do rebounds and back stalls and back flips and cartwheels. And I don't know that either of mine will get to that point. Smokey has the athleticism for it. I know he does, but he's more cautious about things. So yeah, like every dog is doing some of the basic trick behaviors in their everyday life. So it's easier than you think to get started. Like if you have taught your dog how to sit on cue, you have taught your dog a trick. You've already begun. But yeah, like there's nothing wrong with, just trying something that sounds interesting. Like they can go onto the list of tricks, whether it's on AKC, Do More With Your Dog, or, if there's a great trick dog page on Instagram or a YouTube channel that you find, there are some options there where you can find others that are teaching basic tricks and actually breaking them down so you know what the steps are. Like you can just try. If you feel like your dog has some kind of a significant health concern, you would talk to your veterinarian before getting like really active with that. But most dogs realistically already know some tricks and are quite capable of learning something.
I think that's a really eloquent way of putting it because, there's that saying out there, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I have said for the entirety of my life working with animals the last 30 years that is false.
Yeah, you can.
You can always teach a dog new tricks. It doesn't matter how awkward or derpy they are. Fitz is awkward and derpy, but since starting to follow you and Sparky and some of the other trick dogs, I have started teaching tricks to Fitz, and he can now stand up on his hind paws and like sit pretty, but standing on his hind legs. Basically, I don't really know what it's called. He just started doing it, and I was like, "That's cute. We're gonna reward it." So it's just one of those things.
Yeah, and you can always, give fun names to some of the behaviors and tricks that they do. Like how we have the "I love you" hug for Holly. It's a basic behavior, but we made it into something cuter. So really, when your dog starts to exhibit some trick behaviors, you can have a little fun with it. You can get creative with them. Like once they learn to jump, there are any number of other jump apparatus that you can use. You can have them, jump onto things. They can jump onto your back. They can jump over another dog's little hoop. And, so there's a lot of room for creativity once your dog starts to enjoy specific behaviors. And, you can give fun cues to them. I'm working with Holly to turn her sing into a cue of Song of My People, because I have joked with her for years that when she starts howling and just wailing away, that she's singing the song of her people. So we are going to turn her sing cue into Song of My People, Holly, and she will howl and wail and tell me her woes. So you really can have a lot of fun with it, even if it's, the basic behaviors, even if it's a novice level skill, technically, you can have a lot of fun with it, and you can teach them like a combination of tricks together, make it a little routine that they do. You're really not limited by, or you're not really limited other than if you're like not feeling creative, I guess. It's a lot of fun. It gives you a way to do something different, even without teaching them something new. You can find a new way to make things fun.
Well, I think that what you're doing is incredibly fun, and it's definitely fun to watch. And we definitely want all of the followers, listeners, to go check out Sparky and Smokey and April on A Tale of Healers on Instagram and get to know them as well as I have gotten to know you. And I've really enjoyed having you on tonight. Unfortunately, we are starting to run out of time here. So if there's any last thing, any little piece of advice you'd like to give the listeners before we go, now's your time.
Oh, last piece of advice. Sometimes your dog will surprise you with what they can do. So if you see a trick that is expert or advanced level, don't think you can't try. Even if your dog has never done it before, it can happen. They can find something that they really love. So don't let the label decide whether you even try. Like, look at it and give it a shot. Have fun with it. That's the most important part at the end of the day, is having a good time with your dog.
I love it. I think that's probably the best message you could have given. So we're going to call it quits for tonight on Straight Up Dog Talk, and we will see you guys next week.
Straight Up Dog Talk was created by Emily Breslin. It is edited, produced, and co-hosted by Josh Wasta under the supervision of Straight Up Dog Talk, LLC, and Emily Breslin. If you're enjoying this podcast, follow or subscribe to be sure you don't miss an episode, and leave us a review on your favorite platform. Looking for more honest and relatable dog content? Check out our sister show, Unpacked, with Jerry Sheriff and Madison Simpson. Thanks for listening to Straight Up Dog Talk. See you next week.